So another game week out of the way, and my wildcard was played. I can't say that I'm too thrilled about it. Not bad, not great, just okay. But I suppose we build a wildcard for more than just one game week. So Greg, what was your game week like?
Yeah, it was a tough one. I think a lot of people struggled this week. The lineups, there were a lot of lineups that surprised people. A lot of players left out.
Yeah, we have Klopp roulette now.
Well, yeah, Klopp kaleidoscope almost. It was difficult. I mean, I barely fielded 11 players. At one point, it looked like I was going to be lucky to get 8 or 9. And then thank goodness Dye actually ended up playing. But I got 52 points. I took a 4-point hit. So pretty much, below average. The average was 55 this week. So unfortunately, a red arrow for me.
Yeah, same here. Well, I got 56 points on my wild card. Also red arrows as well. We've been talking about it almost every week. Like, it's been so high scoring since the beginning of the season, right? And when I looked at it and looked at which players hauled, and if you look at it, it was Tony, Ismail Assar, and then Salah as captain, and so on, right?
Yeah.
My theory about this whole thing is that a lot of dead teams from Game Week 1 or from preseason ended up flying up the rankings, because if you look at the templates back then, or not templates, sorry, like the drafts, a lot of people were putting in players like Salah because he was good the last time he was in the Premier League, and they were bringing in Tony because he was, there was a lot of hype around him as well, and then Salah as captain. And if you think about it, just those three players alone were like almost 60 points, over 50 points, right? So it's almost like if you have a dead team over there with those players in, you'd probably be touching 70 points, and I think those teams actually ended up inflating the numbers, the average points last week, because when I was looking at the FPL Gameweek website, they have like top 10k and legendary managers and so on.
Yeah.
And the average was about, say, in line with what we scored.
Yeah.
So the way I see it is that, it was actually players who are casuals who have neglected their teams, who are now sitting with massive scores that they probably don't even know about because they just left their teams unattended. So, talk about not being knee-jerk at all on the opposite end of the spectrum.
It is a lesson, though. I mean, for the guys that did pick Tony at the beginning of the season, you really do have to give your players a chance to come through. And it's very difficult also to be very patient with them, because there's only so much you can take before you have to switch. But I think it's interesting how suddenly a tough week comes along, and I mean, I think I only had 3 players that returned points. I'm very happy that I got to 52 in the end. I mean, Salah captain, I think, was almost half my points. And I brought in Rafinha. If I hadn't done that, it was literally my Livramento, who was never supposed to play this week, coming in off the bench and getting another clean sheet, which he's now done twice, which has been fantastic.
Yeah, no, that was an awesome one. So I remember we were briefly talking about it when I was discussing the fact that I'd activated my wildcard. And I think you mentioned the fact that one of the most frustrating things is activating your wildcard, getting your team out, and then your old team actually outscores your new team. Well, at least in this case, I think my new team outscored by about 3 or 4 points. But I think the most frustrating part was Reece James being benched.
Yeah.
So, and then them getting a clean sheet on top of that was just a real kick in the balls, and I was so hoping that they have a clean sheet wipeout, but it didn't happen. But I think if I banked that, say, minimum 6 points over there, just the appearance points and the clean sheet, and got to 62, I would have just felt so much better about my week. Maybe it's just a psychological thing, but I'm not downbeat about my team. But talking about the wildcard, I brought in Livramento for Tsimikas, essentially, and they both scored 5 because they both got yellow cards. How's that for coincidence, right?
Exactly.
And they both would have ended up coming off the bench one way or another anyway to get us points. So, it kind of a lot of my transfers kind of like evened out. And to be fair, especially in this situation, well, one of the reasons why wildcarded, I suppose, was that I didn't even want the Spurs players, let alone them being flagged, and then they both ended up playing anyway.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit annoying as well. But I think overall, looking at the team, I've Bamford and Ronaldo. I'm using Ronaldo as a placeholder for Lukaku essentially. They both returned. They both got points on the board. Salah, it was like mostly the players that I already had, like Salah, Rafinha, and so on, that who returned for me, and well, actually Livramento as well. So I can't rule him out of it. And surprisingly enough, from my old team, Bachmann didn't play, and Foster, who was my sub keeper, ended up playing, and I think got like 3 points or something like that over there. So but I think all in all, where I stand at the moment, I'm still happy with my wild card, because even looking at my old team, I wouldn't have been happy with them going into the next game week anyway. So yeah, I think I'm fairly content with my decision to activate the wild card so far.
Yeah, I think that's key. Like you can't, when a bad week does roll around, it's more important what your team looks like for the week shaping up. And if you're still happy with it, then there's there are always going to be these crazy game weeks where players don't play and you struggle to field an 11. But I think it is a big warning for the season that having maybe a slightly stronger bench is going to make sense. There's going to be rotation. There's going to be rotation heavily in City. It looks like there's going to be some decent rotation in Chelsea and now Liverpool, which none of us were expecting. So I think it's key to have probably two reasonable bench players that you can rely on to come off, and certainly one that's going to be, I think stronger than what I would have planned for had I used my wild card now. I think I'm actually starting to think about choosing one of these cheaper midfielders that seem to be performing very well this season, and possibly having a rotation of 3 of them, with 2 of them playing and one being benched, just giving you that extra depth, because it kind of feels like these weeks are going to be maybe more often than not this season.
Yeah, I agree with you, because the one thing that I've noticed that's different, especially with Klopp this season, well, obviously the first few weeks generally managers don't rotate because there's only one fixture per week or whatever. But once the Champions League start, once the League Cup kicks off as well, then we start to see a little bit more rotation amongst some of the teams. But now it looks like Klopp is getting in on it as well. And that's quite an interesting one, because generally, especially when it came to the premiums, they were like fairly fixed in the team. Look, okay, well, Trent was a different story where he was ill, so he wasn't rotated as such. But I wouldn't be surprised to see the supporting cast. And I know we were talking about it offline as well, where you said you brought in Joel Matip for this week, right? And he didn't play as well. So yeah, I think what you're saying is so could definitely be a determining factor in how we go about playing our wildcards. In my case, I decided to go for MacArthur because I felt, okay, he's bench fodder, but he at least gives me 2 points, which I'm kind of content with from a 4.5 million midfielder. But I think for me, like players like Livramento playing regularly now, and then my last player on the bench is Omo Bamidele from Norwich. He's been playing quite infrequently, but I think so. But he's the last player on the bench, so I'm kind of like, it's fine, But either way, I think it's important to at least, especially when this bonus of having players like Livramento come along, you've got to take it, because it looks like you said, we are going to need it.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit more depth this season, I think. Yeah,
that's right. And I was looking at your model last week as well, when players like Willock were coming around at 6 million, and now he's 5.9. His price has dropped, and because I was keeping an eye on him. And I suppose even players like Emmanuel Dennis, at 5.5. Am I going to put Saint Maximin in that group of players at 6.7 as a forward? Possibly, but I mean, they definitely do come into consideration if you do want that budget, if you're looking for these budget enablers in your team.
Yeah, there are a number of them floating around, and it's just going to be interesting to see which ones are fly by nights, like this. A couple game weeks do really well, and everyone transfers them in, and which ones last. And some of them, like it is interesting from the stats and the model point of view. A guy like Gray, mainly I think because of his minutes have been so limited, even in past seasons. But he's certainly up there in the top 25 at the moment. And so to try and find the ones that really make sense is going to be key. I mean, Ben Rama's also floated into the top 25 now. So I think we can start to really look at like Ben Rama, Gray, Rafinha we already know is a great option. And then, I think also the defenders seem to be scoring pretty highly, the sort of premium-ish defenders. And I think once game week 7 starts, I think Chelsea are just too good to ignore. And I think there might be a few double-ups floating around. Alonso has played every minute so far, and he was almost playing left wing, I think, for most of that game against Spurs.
Imagine having Trent and Alonso in your team. What a dream! And if you have a triple of Trent, Alonso, and Cancelo, I think that is like the dream defense in FPL. Because at that price point as well, it just makes so much sense. Because when I'm looking at Cancelo at 6 million, Alonso at 5.7, I can't think of any midfielders that I'd want at that price. Well, look, obviously, it generally works that way in FPL. But when I say it that way, I'm not just talking about clean sheets. I'm talking about the potential to really haul big.
Yeah.
Even the looking at the midfielders around 7.5 and so on. Yes, you got Jota, Greenwood, those guys. But to be honest with you, like, I would rather have Cancelo and Alonso at the moment than having Greenwood and Jota. And I know, well, Greenwood seems like a stretch because he's only blanked in 1 week. But looking at his upcoming fixtures, the premium defenders just look so great value at the moment that they may just act as budget enablers to possibly get those crazy 3 premium setups, kind of bedded in. If you want Ronaldo, Lukaku, and Salah in your team.
Yeah, I think it's giving your team a lot more depth, and it's giving you that option to, like you said, go for the 3 premiums. So I think a few people might be considering that and looking at possibly even starting 4 defenders and sort of a change of thinking. But the models that I've built certainly reacted to it. Alonso, Trent's always been up there, but now, and Alonso and James have always been forecast to do very well. Once game week 7 rolls up. But in the top 25 players at the moment, we've got Alonso, Trent, James. And Thiago Silva's popped up, and obviously Rudiger as well. But I mean, it all depends on the minutes that these guys are going to get. Rudiger seems like he's and Alonso as well, fairly nailed on. And the performance from Alonso, I can't really see Chilwell really breaking through there unless Alonso gets rested for some Champions League games.
Think you've just jinxed it. You just broke Alonso and Rudiger for everyone else. Now you're going to say he's nailed, and then after they're going to be dropped on the weekend. I suppose that's why I was so frustrated with Reece James on the weekend, and I just hope as a result now I must actually go and check the prices. I hope his price doesn't drop from now until the week, because I'd be absolutely livid, because I'm probably going to monitor, obviously I brought him in on a wild card now, so it would be crazy to transfer him out now. So I'd want to give him a chance to see how often he actually plays. But if he's becoming a massive rotation risk and Alonso continues to play, then that may be an easy move to move from James to Alonso. I mean, even if Alonso's price goes up, I really don't care, because I think it's fairly set in stone that I will be moving Ronaldo over to Lukaku anyway, which means I'll have some money in the bank. Well, right now I have nothing in the bank, so I can't even do that type of move. But I'll just need to keep an eye on that situation, because I suppose in that price bracket, it does at least allow you the flexibility to move quite easily to other players. But it's really a transfer that I just don't want to make at the moment. But there's only so much of rotation risk I can take, especially at that price.
Yeah, I would hang on to James for the moment. I think I think he was rested for that game, and I think there are going to be certain players where, like we spoke about, they're going to play 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 4, and this is where potentially you need to have a stronger bench for when that happens.
Yeah, and
there's
like
not much
said,
you can do about it.
Yeah, exactly. And like you said, the double up on Chelsea defenders definitely becomes an option similar to City's defenders last year.
Yeah, no, I think it looks good from Gameweek 7. It's something that I'm almost certainly going to do, but it just depends on whether I click that wildcard button. At the moment, it doesn't. I'm trying desperately not to, and one of the big plans that I had was to avoid it, and hence the Matip transfer, which was really only a three-week double up on Liverpool's great defensive fixtures, and then a guy that I thought was almost certainly nailed on suddenly didn't play. But I don't expect him not to play for the games that I need him going forward. So it's not going to change my thinking at all.
I think he'll play this weekend.
Yeah, I think he'll play, and I think it's one of those things where when it happens, you just have to go, you're unlucky. There's nothing you can do about it. It's a bit of variance in the game.
Yeah,
and move forward with your plan. Yeah.
Yeah, look, that's why I'm not too downbeat about James as well, because he's such a good player anyway, that there's no way that Thomas Tuchel is not going to play him at least every second or third game or whatever it is. So I think it'll be a fair split between him and Aspilicueta as well. I don't think that it'll ever be a case where James just drops out. Because he seems to be quite highly rated as well anyway. So that shouldn't be... when I say highly rated, sorry, that sounded so generic. Highly rated by Thomas Tuchel specifically. So it's not just going to be a case where he just disappears and then... Well, if it does, like I said, there is a contingency plan. But I'm fairly confident that he'll still do well over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I think he'll play most games, I reckon. They had Aspilicueta playing wing back this time, and I think the majority of the time he's going to be playing, in one of the central roles. And I wouldn't worry too much about James. You can assess it if it continues to happen a little bit more often than you like, and then you I think basically you got to just move towards the guys that are less rotation risks. And if you find yourself in that situation, and it starts to happen a little bit more than you can stomach, then you just make that switch.
I'm going to treat it like the situation, like last season I had Stones and Cancelo double up for a big period. Most of us did. But I'm going to treat it in the same way, because I feel like when these players play, they more than make up for that one game or two games that they'll miss within 10 games. And if you look at something like, I was just trying to assess my transfers the other day as well, and I looked at the fact that I moved White onto Dyer, and then Dyer got me 7 points in the first game and then 1 point in the next game, and then I asked myself, was this a good or bad transfer? And because I transferred him out on my wildcard anyway, and I thought, actually, you know what, for a short-term transfer it actually didn't work out too bad, because he averaged 4 points per game. And if you think about it, if a defender, especially a 4.5 million defender, is giving you 4 points per game, you see that as some type of gold in your team, because 4 points per average for a defender per game is really quite good. And if you're looking at the numbers that these guys are putting up, like Stones and Cancelo last year, or now even the Chelsea defenders and so on, even the likes of Trent, and even Virgil put up 12 this past weekend, right?
Yeah.
With that amount that they're giving you, they could miss 2 games or 3 games out of 10, and they'll still far outscore the players who play 10 out of 10 a lot of the times.
Yeah, as long as you've got guys coming off the bench and
definitely,
I think
right.
It's for sure the way to go.
Yeah, and I suppose maybe that will be one of the reasons to be deterred maybe away from this 3 premium situation that we're seeing a lot of people trying to get into. And I know whenever I speak about the 3 premium, I kind of like say it with such scorn, like look down on the whole thing. But really, you know what? Each season and each each season has these situations where you presented with a different a unique set of circumstances. And the more I think about it, the more I think, this three premium situation isn't as bad as I might make it seem. Especially if you're willing to sacrifice one or two other areas, you could have quite a very good team and still be able to play with the three premiums.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a lot sort of mid-range at the moment. Seven, like we spoke about, that 7.5 million to, let's say, 10 million zone is quite bare this season. So it almost does open itself up for that, where you can load yourself with these guys that might be slight rotation risks, but as long as you've got cover, you're fine, and fit in the big guys. And that might be the route to go.
Yeah, I'm still not a fan of the 4 defenders thing, because we've discussed it before. I've done it at the beginning of the season. I wasn't happy with the results because I always felt like I was 5 or 6 points short, or 7 or 8 points short, or whatever it is, by not having that extra attacker in my team and just playing with the 6 attackers. But I suppose, like I said, each season has its own unique set of circumstances. And it just might be that one this season, especially with the fact that even guys like Son and Kane are also expensive. So it's not like last season where Son and Kane combined were 3.5 million cheaper than this season. Yeah. So that it has its own issues, and the guys who are in that 9.5 million bracket, like Sancho and Mahrez and a few others, they aren't performing that well either. So they become non-entities right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, man. And then I think the biggest frauds not just in FPL but in EPL at the moment is Wolves. I don't know what to do with them. I'm so tired of them right now. They're really wearing my patience thin, because from going from XG United, they absolutely just put in such a poor performance against Brentford. But they still have one or two good fixtures coming up. I mean, we've spoken about this before. But what you make about, did you watch that Brentford game by any chance?
Yeah, I mean, it's so frustrating. I've got a double up at the moment with Trinca and Jimenez, and I mean, I would love not to have any of them at the moment, but I'm sort of been forced into it just with the transfers I made, and I mean, all I want to do is click the wildcard button to get rid of my Wolves players. But like you said,
unwildcard to get them out.
It's frustrating because their fixtures are so good, and their fixtures coming up are so good, and I think personally I have to hold them at least until the Newcastle game. That Newcastle Leeds game was a wild game. How that game ended up 1-1 was, I mean, it was beyond me how the scoreline was 2 goals.
I was so frustrated with Rafinha towards the ending of the first half. Why didn't he shoot earlier?
Oh my gosh. I was screaming at the TV. This was the guy that I transferred in for a hit, and when I clicked on 30 minutes into the game and he'd scored, I felt like, oh, this is going to be one of those brilliant game weeks. And then I think when he didn't shoot there, I was screaming, come on, just shoot, and he took forever, and just it's frustrating. But he got himself into some great positions. The game was wide open, and it looks like basically anyone playing Newcastle or Leeds at the moment, the game's going to be in a similar vein. I think I'm going to hold on to the Wolves guys at least until Newcastle, and then hopefully I'll have some transfers in the bank then to be able to make some changes if I need to.
Yeah, look, as much as I'm frustrated with them, because I had Saiz who got subbed at half time, so I ended up with a -1 because he got a yellow card as well on top of it.
Yeah.
And then Raul Jimenez, I don't even want to go there because he had a header towards the end, but he could have realistically had 2 assists in that game if Traore finished better, and I think one was for Trinca, or was it both for Traore? But I think it was small margins. But I mean, you know what? If we have to go into hypotheticals, we'll be speaking here for the next year or whatever it is, right? It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
But it's like the numbers don't lie about them either, because I'm just looking at the stats on Fantasy Football Scout over here as well, and looking at the XG numbers. So Liverpool have the highest XG with 13.45. They've scored 12. City have 12.01 as the XG, and they've scored 11. And then the next up is Wolves with 9.19 XG, and they've scored twice.
Yeah, it's dismal. It really is dismal, especially when you've owned Wolves players for so long, like me.
Yeah, they by far the most underperforming team regarding XG. To put it into context, the next biggest underachievers are Arsenal, who have an XG of 5.73 and they've only scored twice. So I mean, it's not even the variance, the delta between Wolves is 7.19 between XG and actual goals. It's really it's so frustrating, looking at what happened over there. And we were talking about reversion to the mean last week when we were on last week's episode of the podcast. But yeah, I mean, in this case, I don't know what reversion to the mean actually means for Wolves. Is it meaning actually matching the XG, or will the XG start matching the actuals? I just don't know what to make of them at the moment.
Yeah, it's tough. And if you haven't brought anyone in, I think it's definitely there's nothing that makes you want to bring a Wolves player into your team at the moment.
Yeah, look, we spoke about it last week as well. They still have two more. I think they've got Norwich and Newcastle up left.
Southampton away, and then Newcastle.
Southampton. Yeah. Southampton. We were speaking about them, I think, earlier in the season. But I must say, for what it's worth, they've done so well. I mean, now 3 fixtures against Manchester United, against West Ham, and now City. Top 6 teams, and they've put in such great shifts in all of those games, where to the point where we have to start maybe taking them a little bit more serious in terms of not seeing them as the walkover as we did maybe a few weeks ago when Vestergaard left.
Yeah, it's surprising. I mean, to get a clean sheet against City is a very impressive feat. I mean, my fixture ticker rated that obviously very good for City from an attack perspective, and very bad for Southampton from a defence perspective. And if we look at just even the first 5 weeks so far, the average number of goals scored in that fixture class is 2.86, which is huge. So you can imagine for them to keep a clean sheet under those circumstances is insane.
Yeah, definitely. And it's not even like, the goalkeeper ended up getting 10 saves and 3 bonus points. City only had 1 shot on target all game, so Southampton had 2 shots on target for what it's worth. And looking at the expected goals conceded, they actually sit somewhere in mid-table. Southampton just got 6.51 expected goals, and they've conceded 6. So it's not like they're vastly over or underperforming. They're sort of performing to the mean anyway, which is actually, I suppose, good news to a certain extent, because it kind of gives us look, it is only 5 game weeks, so it's still a very small sample. We'll only see that in another 5 game weeks or so. But I suppose it's something that we can look at and think, okay, this isn't actually too bad, especially for Livramento owners now.
Yeah, I mean, he's been fantastic for me. It was probably one of the better picks that I had pre-season, and I mean, to get 2 clean sheets off the bench in 2 weeks, I can't ask for more from a 4 million defender when I picked him in the beginning.
You'd be happy with that from Trent. Just to get you clean sheet points, even if he doesn't get you attacking returns.
Yeah, exactly.
And yet you're getting that from a 4 point. Now I think he's like 4.2 or whatever it is. And looking at Southampton's fixtures, I actually wanted to go through that. So next up they have Wolves, which now I have Saiz in my starting 11 and I have Livramento on my bench, and I'm actually thinking I should have it the other way around.
Well, I mean, I think the model still, actually it's pretty close now, and I think with the updated model, Wolves are only slightly better than Southampton for that game defensively. Wolves are at minus 0.19, so that's obviously the bigger the minus, the better for defense. And Southampton are at minus 0.09, so there's almost nothing in it. It really does come down to who you prefer. Yeah.
I'm going with the feeling of that Wolves have just worn me thin to the point where I'm just tired of them and I'd rather go with the Southampton players at the moment. But looking at the Southampton fixtures, they've got Wolves up next, then they've got Chelsea in game week 7. Okay, fine. I know we're not doing a game week 7 preview at the moment, but does that maybe make us rethink captaining Lukaku against Southampton in game week 7?
I think that's a game week 7 problem, to be honest. I think we're going to have more dates by the time we get there. As it stands, if I look at my model at the moment for game week 7, I can actually tell you what it says. Let's have a look here. It's still got Lukaku as the big favourite. Ronaldo in second and Salah in third.
Look, I'm not surprised by that, looking at the fixtures anyway, to be honest with you. But I think the reality of it is that Southampton have just been doing much better than we've been giving them credit for. They've been really quite good.
Yeah, they have been good, and it's always nice when you do see those opportunities for those teams. But Chelsea have been outstanding, and I think I would back the strength of Chelsea more than the improvement from Southampton.
Yeah, no, sure, definitely. And look, to be fair, Southampton haven't won a game yet, so all season.
Yeah, but I think they'll take those points for sure. What they've ended up getting versus top 6 teams.
Yeah, no, sure, definitely. But looking at their fixtures, they've got Wolves in game week 6, then they've got Chelsea in game week 7, and then after that, Leeds, who we'll get to a little bit more just now. Burnley, Watford, Villa, Norwich. I don't think that's not a bad run at all, especially if you're deciding maybe to go Adam Armstrong as well. I think there might be a few Southampton players that pop up on the radar there for that little stretch. I think they've got some decent midfielders as well, and all very very well priced. So it'll be interesting. You can have Armstrong and Armstrong in your team. Both from Southampton.
Nice to do that. To do the little double up with the double up.
And then just to see that the one Armstrong returned and the other didn't. And then if you only have one of them, you won't know whether to celebrate or not. Almost like VAR. You'll have to decide. Okay, let me check which Armstrong returned first. That for me is quite. A nice one turning up where we can look for some bargain options over there. And then also like the likes of Che Adams might come into our thinking as well at some point in time. And then, talking about Leeds. Now, again, we want to give them the benefit of the doubt, I suppose. They've got West Ham up next, which is a bit of a difficult one. But Watford, Southampton, Wolves, Norwich. So that's a good run of fixtures right up until game week 10.
Yes.
And I mean, I suppose if there's any time to have a group, Leeds players, it's probably now. But still, I look at them and I'm still not convinced. I don't think they're as bad as Wolves, but they don't fill me with that confidence either. Where I'm really convinced. Okay, you know what? It's just a matter of time that they're gonna bang, and then everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think Leeds attackers are still looking pretty decent. I mean, they're not clinical and they're not scoring huge goals, but they created a lot of chances in that game against Newcastle. So I'm pretty happy having Rafinha in my team. I would definitely consider bringing Bamford in as well. But from a defensive point of view, I think you're going to struggle. I think it does look like Leeds and Newcastle are not teams that you want to be selecting defenders from at this stage. Yeah,
I've just ignored the defenders as well. I've got Rafinha and Bamford in my team at the moment. That was part of I had Rafinha already since game week 1, but bringing Bamford in on my wildcard and both of them returning at the same time was actually quite a good feeling to kick off my wildcard week, So I think that was one of the, we always take these small positives out of our game weeks as well. I think that was one of them, I suppose.
Yeah.
But looking at the expected goals conceded, Newcastle still at the top. They've been at the top since the beginning of the season at 11.95. Norwich at second, no surprises at 10.64, and then Leeds at third, 10.20. Now the team in fourth is Arsenal at 10.05. But the good news is for people who want to have Arsenal defenders in their team, is that the last two games against Norwich and Burnley, so really giants of the game over there, I suppose, they only conceded an expected goals of 1, essentially just 1 point something in each of the games. So it does show that there is a bit of improvement from Arsenal, especially in the weaker fixtures as well.
Yeah, and they've got decent fixtures coming up, so I'm not rushing to bring Arsenal defenders into my team, but I think game week 8 they've got a good run. They've got Crystal Palace, Villa, Leicester, Watford, and they all seem to be pretty decent fixtures for them defensively. So let's see how they do against Spurs and Brighton. I think that'll possibly give us the information we need to whether we're ready yet to take the plunge back into Arsenal players.
Yeah, definitely. I say same here. Like, I feel fine. It's 2 game weeks against 2 attacks that have been quite atrocious this season anyway. But I think we need a little bit of a bigger sample to determine whether Arsenal are serious contenders. I suppose it feeds into the narrative of if you have rotating defenders and playing the fixtures, then somebody like Arsenal will still work for you anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Crystal Palace and Watford fixtures definitely look like good ones.
Yeah.
So it can't hurt having one of the Arsenal players in your defensive rotation. Wolves were the ones that everyone was targeting, and they've been horrendous. So it just shows you that I think I would definitely be leaning towards premium defensive options at this point. If you can get almost the dream team that we spoke of, Trent and Alonso and Cancelo, or doubling up on some of the Chelsea guys, I think that might be the way to go. I'll definitely be looking at that. If I was doing my wild card this week, I'd be looking at that over sort of a cheap defensive rotation.
Yeah, definitely. And especially now with the 4 points in the low 4 million options emerging, it just acts as such a great enabler as well.
Exactly. I mean, it doesn't. If one of the guys doesn't play and you've got Livramento coming off the bench, it's almost a guaranteed clean sheet at the moment.
Yeah, he's essential. Livramento is essential now.
Exactly.
So looking at the other end of the spectrum of expected goals conceded, City have the best defensive record so far in terms of their 2.61 expected goals conceded. They've only conceded once on the opening day of the league against Spurs. So that's why I suppose, we've been talking so much about Cancelo, and that's one of the great reasons why you would want to have him, because again, yes, you don't rely on as much as maybe on like how much we rely on Trent to get attacking returns, but with someone like Cancelo in your team, the possibility of getting some bonus points in there as well, and attacking return just increases quite a bit as well.
Yeah, and he's been good. He's got I think a few assists, and he seems to be one of the more attacking City defenders. So I think, can't compare to Alonso left wing.
We can't compare to that.
He could have scored 3 goals last week against Spurs. I mean, it was quite scary watching the game as a non-owner. You're just hoping that things didn't go in.
Yeah, definitely. So that's just based on this numbers alone, it looks great reason to bring in any City defender who actually plays regularly. But in terms of Cancelo specifically, it's attacking returns we're looking at. And then next, the second lowest expected goals conceded is Brentford, which nothing's changed from last week. We've got to start giving them credit. Look, they play Liverpool this weekend, so hopefully we can double that and make it 6 expected goals conceded by next week. But it's definitely one of those things where I start looking at it and think, okay, well, you've got the Ronaldo captaincy option essentially if you do have Ronaldo against Villa. But Salah against Brentford, is it looking that good considering these Brentford numbers?
I mean, you have to take note of how good they've been. Their numbers are just insane, and their defense has been really, really good. So a lot of people are considering not captaining Salah for this fixture, but I think from a numbers standpoint, I think it's still pretty mad. I think Salah is just his numbers are just so phenomenal, and you combine that with the number of goals that Liverpool are scoring, and even though Brentford have been so good in defence, I think I think it would be a mistake not to captain
Yeah,
Salah.
Salah could probably score from 0.001 xg, and then it changes everything.
Yeah,
as well.
his conversion has just been so good. I mean, this season I think he's sitting at on my model of a delta of about 137%. So I mean that's really really good stuff.
Yeah, no, he's just been amazing, and he looks so up for it. And yeah, even with the yellow cards for taking off his shirt and so on, I'd let him have it. He deserves it, so it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Klopp was just laughing that one off. I don't think he minded too much.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the one team that I definitely want to look at is Villa. Now they're sitting third on expected goals conceded, probably. From I think maybe was it the game against Watford or Chelsea where they conceded quite a few high quality chances, but they have expected goals conceded of 4.27. They've conceded 7, but the Leon Bailey's cameo against Everton was just something so special, man. He just came on and he decided, you know what, today is his day.
Yeah, I missed the game unfortunately, but
I missed
didn't
the
expect
10 minutes. I went to the kitchen. It was 0-0. I came back and it was 3-0.
I mean, I was very surprised that Everton didn't score. It was looking at the result. And
he had a good chance. He should have scored, and he also had another cross that he flashed across the box. And just millimeters away, I think, from Rondo, and it could have been a goal. But yeah, small margins again. But yeah, I think Everton could have had a chance. Had 1 or 2 chances. But yeah, that cameo there from Leon Bailey. He ended up going off injured after like 20 minutes. But it was one of the most impactful performances I've ever seen in my life in football. It was absolutely incredible.
Awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to check out the highlights from that then.
Yeah,
I've actually been away, so I'm actually getting back, and there are quite a few of the games that I need to catch up on. But I managed to watch a lot, which was great. But it's always tough when you're not in your usual environment. I love to watch every game if I can, and unfortunately, didn't quite get everything this weekend.
Yeah, look, he got a standing ovation from his home fans, but he literally came on, got an assist, scored a cracker, then pulled his hammy and went off. But it was one of those performances there. I think even if you're playing at an opposition ground, that even the home fans will probably stand up and applaud you anyway if you're going off, because it was just
that good.
It was amazing. It's one of those probably. Look, I won't overkill it and say one of the best performances, but it's probably one that will stick with me for a while because it was quite impactful. It was really really brilliant to see a player come on for 20 minutes and just do that and be like, okay,
that's awesome.
I'm done.
Yeah.
So looking at the XG data, so looking at it over there, I mean, we spoke about Liverpool, City, and then Wolves coming in at third. West Ham is fourth, actually, 8.98. And they scored 11 goals now. So, just marginal overperformance, which is kind of expected in this case. And then Chelsea with the XG of 8.17 and 12 goals. So looking at the players who are, not the players, but the teams who are vastly overperforming their XG at the moment, or not vastly, but who are there in terms of variance. So Manchester United top the list where they have an XG of 8.01, but they scored 13, so that's a difference of 4.99. And Chelsea is next up, so no surprises there with the XG of 8.17, and they've scored 12. So them, Manchester United and Chelsea have very similar numbers, but then next up is third. In third, Everton is 7.47 with the XG and then 10 goals scored. So interesting numbers there.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think Everton, they still don't quite convince me. There's just something that I don't mind spending the 5.8 for Gray,
it's
but
Everton, okay.
Yeah, maybe it's just because I'm a Liverpool supporter.
It's Everton.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, same here. Look, I suppose with them again, it comes down to the track record. You want to see this happening regularly before you're convinced that you want to take the plunge on those players.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and then the one thing that I noticed that I was just looking at it because I generally don't pay too much attention to the expected goals from set plays. But I thought it interesting that I just mentioned it because and put it out there. Okay, so okay, let me ask you this: who do you think has the highest XG from set plays? You maybe saw it already, but if you haven't or you haven't taken notice of it, who would you say has the highest XG from set plays?
Jeez, that's an interesting one. I haven't seen it. If I had to guess, it would. I was going to say Arsenal, but they haven't scored many goals. So, yeah, I'm not sure.
You're probably not gonna. You probably won't be surprised by this answer at all. But it's actually Burnley because Tarkovsky and me and those giants over there in their team. But the second best is Liverpool at 3.6. So Burnley is 3.7.
Okay.
Liverpool at 3.6. And it just makes me think that the fact that it just shows, okay, fine, obviously you need somebody at the end of it to actually convert those chances as well. But it might also point to the fact that when looking at fullbacks especially, or players like Trent, Tsimikas, Robbo, or guys who are taking set pieces, or especially if you're looking for budget enablers, that those 4.5 midfielders that you're hoping might come off one time, this might be a good differentiating factor at some point in time to look at the expected goals from set plays if you're looking for those guys to just be bench fodder at times.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, if that's the case, it definitely gives Trent even more reason not to get rid of Trent in the wild card.
Exactly. I mean, just looking at that, I was so impressed because when I look at XG from open play, I suppose not surprising to a certain extent that City top it with 9.36, but in second, it's from open play alone, Liverpool at 9.06. So if you look at it over there, I mean, it just shows what a threat Liverpool carry from set pieces.
Yeah, that's huge. And you've got pretty much Robbo and Trent firing those corners in all the time. So I think maybe moving from a Chelsea double up to a Liverpool double up at some stage might become an option.
Yeah, definitely. If the fixtures are good, it definitely would be a double up at some a consideration for double up at least. Or we can just go with 5 defenders, 2 Liverpool, 2 Chelsea, 1 City. And then have 3 premiums up front. We sorted 100 points every week coming in. Now look, I was just looking through those numbers today, and then I just found it quite fascinating that take away the XG from set plays, and it shows that in open play, Liverpool are actually doing so well also to actually finish off chances there. But the like you say, the fullbacks at Liverpool become so important in your consideration for premium defenders. And even someone like Tsimikas, if you want to carry him on your bench as a last option, it may just be worth it if he's going to get these, if we start, what did you call it earlier? Was it not
Kaleidoscope?
Kaleidoscope, wow, man. If that becomes a thing, you might have an option in Tsimikas coming off your bench to get you some points as well.
Yeah, you feel like Klopp's almost trying to reward him for how well he played in those games when Robbo was injured. But
I think so as well. I definitely agree with you there because I think it's a case of, these guys are playing so well. I mean, did you see Naby Keita's goal though? Wow.
What a screamer, yeah.
Yeah, I think the celebration was better actually. I like the celebration more.
The straight-faced goal, that was, it's quite impressive. It's a bit like having, when you have to have the straight-faced tequila and the emotion that must be going through you after scoring a goal like that must be massive.
Yeah, no, that was probably the highlights of my weekend for me was Keita's celebration over there. Look, so some interesting numbers popping up over here in terms of individual players. I just saw that Cristiano Ronaldo now has the highest XG from all individual players. So that's, I suppose, not surprising because he does take up a fairly central position in the box. He's playing as a poacher essentially now as well. Yeah. So I'm not going to say now, be overly surprised by that type of stat as well. But to see, but I suppose from an FPL perspective, that's good news.
Yeah, if you're a Ronaldo owner, that's fantastic news. I mean, he's played 180 minutes, and everyone else has played 450. So it's a huge statistic. His conversion rate is only 90% though, which is it's a lot lower than we used to from Ronaldo. So he could have had a few penalties. I mean, they were all manufactured penalties, and I think the refs did really well not to give them as it happened. But I would expect that he's going to win a few. He's very smart in the way he tries to do it, and I think it was a little bit too obvious this week on what he was trying to do.
Maybe one of them could have been given, at least the first one possibly. But it's a fine line. Once we start talking about those type of things, you could probably go back and scrap off 90% of penalties maybe, and I think it probably speaks to more the poor officiating in the game than anything else.
But we can see the change for this season is a massive one, because last season there's no doubt that everything would have been awarded, and this season there's even with a lot of the fouls and infield, but between the box fouls, there's a lot more that's getting waved on, and the refs really seem to be trying to let the game flow more this season, and also they're not falling for the soft fouls. If someone pushes, even if there's contact, it doesn't mean that you're getting a foul anymore. And last season it was just ridiculous the number of penalties that were given. It really ruined the game. And this season they've gone to the opposite extreme. So I think it's much better for football. It's much more enjoyable when it's a hard game that guys are playing, and they're not waiting for that little touch in the back and then falling over. It's good to see. It's a massive improvement.
Yeah, look, definitely. The one thing I think though, maybe once you get used to it, is to also be more discernible of it, because you do end up with situations like what happened with Harvey Elliott, where he ends up getting injured as a result. I mean, that was a ridiculous decision.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think there's a difference between an absolutely shocking leg breaker type tackle, which I think they're still doing well at giving red cards to. Versus someone who's just you have a situation where you're going for the ball and you're being a defender, and there's a big difference between being hard and basically being completely over aggressive in your tackles, and as soon as there's studs up and legs flying, then I agree. Then it's red cards for sure. But the more the tackles that are being done within the laws of the game, but are hard tackles, are being allowed, and I think that's great.
Yeah, no, definitely. I agree with you there as well. And looking at some of the numbers as well. Cristiano Ronaldo has it's either from Norwich, who I'll remove him out of, but because he doesn't play that regularly. But looking at Cristiano Ronaldo specifically, he has the highest minutes per XG now in the game.
Yeah,
it's 53.7.
It's miles ahead here for sure.
So it looks like him there being he's really involved at the moment, and that's good news again for Ronaldo owners. And I suppose it's going to make it very difficult for people to just move away from Ronaldo to Lukaku come Game Week 7.
Yeah, I think you can hold him for Game Week 7 against Everton. I think the real and Leicester have been pretty poor as well. So I wouldn't be worried about having him in Game Week 8 either. But then the run, sort of the bad fixture run, really starts
from Game Week 9.
Yeah. So, and Ronaldo's record is notoriously bad against top 4, top 6 teams. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see if he can actually change that, because he is the type of guy that will know about that and will really be out there to prove everyone wrong. But I'm very happy, personally, I'm very happy with Lukaku at this stage. I think he was unlucky not to get returns on the weekend. If it wasn't for flipping XG, absolute worst XG person in the world, Timo Werner, I think he could easily have had an assist and possibly a few better passes, and he could have had a better opportunity on goal. But holding him for his fixture run, I think he's a must-have. Salah is a must-have, and for me, Lukaku is a must-have. And I think Ronaldo is a nice to have for that fixture run.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I think that's about it for our review of what's happened already, and yeah, we'll catch up and do a preview of GW6 soon.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Clyde.
Cheers, man.